it out. A brief introduction to myself. I'm in charge of environmental programs at the Mid-America Regional Council. We're the regional planning organization for the bi-state Kansas City area. We work with 100 different city municipalities in a 9-county area in the Kansas City metro. And on the environmental side, we work on a lot of different issues, from air quality to water quality, solid waste management, open space conservation, land use planning, and we're trying increasingly from a sustainability lens to tie this stuff together with our transportation planning work and some of the other things that are happening in the agency. And my understanding of tonight's presentation was that in previous conversations here that there were maybe 3 particular interests that you had, and I'm going to try and weave my presentation to address all of them in a little bit of a circuitous way, and I'll appreciate your forbearance as I do that, and if I'm missing the mark, maybe you guys can let me know and I'll adjust. But I understand that there have been discussions about tree protection, erosion control, and green infrastructure, and essentially, my argument would be that it would be to think very comprehensively about these set of issues and looking at the interrelationships among them, and to think about how an integrated watershed management or green infrastructure program might support your efforts or rationalize your efforts to reduce erosion or to provide a basis for a solid erosion control ordinance or its enforcement. Similarly for tree protection or landscape kinds of ordinances, or other land protection, land conservation, or watershed management kinds of efforts. So my presentation will be drawing really from 2 sets of experiences that I've had. The first is at MARC, we have led a collaboration amongst many of our local governments and folks from our local engineering community and thinking about how we might, and thinking about new tools we could develop to support a more progressive stormwater management agenda, and that includes erosion control. And I'm going to speak about that. And similarly, I worked for about 1.5 years at the city of Lenexa, which is a suburb in the southwestern portion of our metro on the Kansas side, and they're our most progressive municipality on watershed programs. And I headed up their watershed programs, and that was my municipal experience in which I wrote and helped get adopted the first erosion control ordinance and stream setback ordinance, and helped frame the development of the comprehensive watershed program. And so those 2 sets of experiences are really the main set of things that I'm drawing from in my presentation. I hope that they apply. To the extent that they don't, I apologize, but perhaps there would be opportunities in conversation to look for parallels or where things fit or where they don't. So in a presentation, I'd like to start with this piece. I just think it's a wonderful image. We have the Missouri River coming out of the top, the Kansas River out of the bottom left, and here's downtown right here. And it's just a different look at Kansas City, right? I mean, I don't have the interstate highways shown. I don't have the jurisdictional lines. But if we're interested in green infrastructure, and we're interested in water quality protection, or we're interested in protecting trees or open spaces, it's nice to start with a map that shows you something about the structure of the landscape, that shows you the relationship among... Thank you, I'm sorry. That helps you get a sense about the interrelationships in the natural landscape, and that can help inform the management of those landscapes. And here we just overlaid the county boundary lines just for your reference. But if you look at, if you were to draw watershed lines on this, you would cross many different city and county boundary lines, which suggests the need for working together. And we did that in our tool development. And really, our next phase is trying to bring folks together to have a more active watershed management agenda. So this slide is from Tom Schuler from the Center for Watershed Protection. And I thought it would be a useful starting point to just sort of frame the overall discussion. And in a lot of ways, land protection, erosion control, conservation, stream buffer, stormwater, you need to think of it holistically. And there's a lot of different pieces that need to tie together in order to have a robust program. And this slide really reflects that. And as we're talking about how we develop the land, we're wondering, how the slide on the left is it could be anywhere USA, right? And how do we design these sorts of places to accomplish lots of different community goals at the same time, whether they're ecological or social or economic development kinds of objectives? You could be looking at residential, commercial. There's a lot of different tools we have at our disposal to do a better job. My guess is this slide is something that you all are very familiar with, but I wanted to start here because conceptually it's just so important. The hydrologic cycle is something we're all familiar with, right? Water falls from the sky and runs to the sea, or something like that. But as we change the nature of the landscape, what ends up happening from an undeveloped condition to a developed condition is you reduce dramatically how much water the land can hold, right? So it's sort of a no-brainer. But when you think about that in the context of tree protection or erosion control or other water quality or environmental planning kinds of objectives, it helps crystallize your understanding of how this works. Because if you're going to take the top off of a hill, that hill can no longer hold water. You lose the assimilative capacity of the landscape to manage flows of water as it did under natural conditions, and what will invariably happen will be a set of solutions that perhaps can't optimize the environmental qualities you might be trying to obtain. I don't want to dwell on this stuff, but I had read in the notes from one of, I think, a planning commission meeting you had previously. There was a comment that we want to design with the land, not have development determine what the land should look like, or there's a quote sort of like that. And the principles that guided Lenex's work are listed here, but in essence, the city was trying to be proactive. We're saying we really want to balance the built and natural environment, and a lot of this stuff flowed out of a comprehensive city vision and land use plan that then informed subsequent watershed planning. And there were a lot of tools that were developed along the way that went from stormwater management master plan to a natural resource inventory. A lot of the stuff got codified in the comprehensive land use plan and then in the unified development code, which is of course where a tree protection ordinance or erosion control ordinance would probably live, I suspect. And so thinking about how those pieces relate to other pieces of your code and your plans is really critical. And we tried very hard to knit together something that the development community could support and was technically and scientifically defensible. In essence, it all starts, in my view, with land use, right? Here's a satellite image of Kansas City from around 2001. The yellow is housing starts in the 80s and the red in the 90s. The thing that's interesting here is, here's downtown, right, the confluence of the two rivers. If we can, I used to say this before the current economic conditions, but our projected growth was that we would add 350,000 people in the next 25 to 30 years, and assuming conventional land use development patterns, we would develop an area of land approximately equal to Clay County in size, which is about 400 miles. It's this county in the middle and the north. And that brings with it lots of impacts, right? And if we're interested in protecting some elements of the natural landscape, then we have to think comprehensively. Both we have to think at a site scale, at a city or watershed scale, at a regional scale, looking at lots of dynamics to see how we can get where we want to go. If we're looking, this map shows it's the aggregation of all the adopted comprehensive land use plans by all the city and county governments in our region, and we haven't yet begun to do scenarios with this information, thinking through, well, what would happen under, with aggressive conservation, with aggressive natural resource management and restoration kinds of strategies in terms of how it would affect all the different variables that we'd be concerned with, the economic and the environmental and the community-minded concerns. But clearly that's where we're going. And it's really interesting to play with this stuff and to think across scales about how the pieces fit together. And in our community, this is the kind of stuff that's the best of what we have left. These are the best remnant natural areas we have. They tend to be along these stream corridors. About 40% of the best natural areas we have left in Kansas City are in places that look like this. And one of the lessons learned is, try and do a bunch of things at one time. Try and look for multi-purpose kinds of solutions. These are the environments where you get the trails, where you get increased real estate values from being adjacent to a nice natural area, where you get the flood control and the water quality and the habitat kinds of benefits, and you can only get these through proactive planning and city policy and investment and protecting important places like this. So I just want to click through a series of slides now. One of the things we did at MARC and also at Lenexa was a natural resource inventory, and this is really interesting from a planning perspective, and I think that'll become clear as I go through. So this initial layer shows lakes, rivers, and streams, wetlands, 100-year floodplains, lowland vegetation. And then to add all that stuff together and just turn it all blue, and This is a compilation GIS layer of our water resources, and there's 3 more images of upland stuff. Here's steep slopes, forests and woodlands, and grasslands. We can pull those 3 together, turn them green, and click one more time, and put that all together, and that represents 22% of the landscape in our community. When I showed this to the Home Builder Association of Greater Kansas City, they freaked out. They're like, oh my gosh, you're proposing substantial development restrictions. I said, absolutely not. All I'm trying to do is to bring to bear really good, scientifically defensible information that characterizes the natural environment so we can make better decisions at a project scale, at a planning scale, at a policy scale, so we can get where we need to go. I'll tell you, it's a 3-year project to develop this information, the science underneath it and the statistics, and that is very, very complex. But the simple thing is, until you have good information about,